Welcome once again back to the lab. It is your old Professor Pilk, and I want to have a little discussion about Pokemon Legends ZA and some of the things that we kind of have presumed are going to happen around this. Now, if there's one thing first and foremost that we really need to discuss, it's the limitations of the Switch. You guys absolutely, we all know, 100%, the Switch is dated material. Like, at this point, I think the Scarlet and Violet release has really proven was that the Switch is... it needs a replacement, and they need something coming up. Now, recently we've received a lot of word about the Switch 2. There's been a lot of talk, and supposed leakers have dropped stuff on it. There's just been a ton of talk around the Switch 2. And if you remember a year or two ago, they were talking about the Switch Pro, and then we got the OLED instead. And honestly, at the time, we were having so many problems with supply chain issues and things like that, that a replacement Switch at the same time as the PS5 and the new Xbox is dropping really didn't make a lot of sense. Like, who's spending $300 to $400 on a console that essentially is also a portable device or whatever when, you know, the next big consoles were coming out? And plus, there was going to be a limited release anyway because nobody had hardware at the time. Chips were really hard to come by and all that good stuff. So I think them scrapping this really made a lot of sense, and a lot of people that did emulation of Scarlet and Violet saw how well it ran on a PC. Kind of gives me the impression, and not a lot of people talk about this, but I really do personally feel like they had something better on the horizon, and they just flat out didn't release it because it just wouldn't have made financial sense. I just don't think it would have been a financial success. Now, we are at a state where the Switch is at a major bottleneck, right? There's no question about it. Legends Arceus was really good. It did have some frame rate issues from time to time, but it was nowhere near as bad as Scarlet and Violet was at times. Don't get me wrong, I love Scarlet and Violet. It is one of my favorite Pokemon games, but you have to accept the fact it does have faults. It is not a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination. So when we're talking about the release of another Legends game, which arguably is going to have similar mechanics to Legends Arceus, I love that, by the way. I love the challenge that Legends Arceus brought and the way it changed up how everything works. Hands down, probably my #1 favorite Pokemon game. Call that a hot take, call it what you want. I just love what it did for the franchise. So I look forward to another Legends game. But let's be honest here, finding Pokemon in the wild on Legends Arceus was significantly more difficult than it is in Scarlet and Violet. They were nowhere near as prevalent as they otherwise normally are. So really, I think if we're going to drop another Legends game, we really need like the sprite generation that Scarlet and Violet really has. But that's kind of a major limitation of the Switch itself. I mean, let's be fair, the Switch is almost 10-year-old tech. The hardware architecture that it's built on was based around a 2015 chipset. You can go look that up. I'm not exaggerating. Yes, it was released in 2017, but at the time, it's what they had available. And think about how far just phones and tablets have come in that time. It's no short miracle that the Nintendo Switch is kind of done what it's done. So, honestly, it's completely plausible that if we're going to have Legends Arceus, we need to have a Switch replacement. Legends Arceus, Legends Z Alpha. There's going to have to be a Switch replacement before this drops. Well, I may have some good news for you guys, because a lot of leakers and a lot of people have lately been talking about this. It's been a huge talking point. So, a lot of industry analysts have said they expect the Switch 2 to be released in March 2025. Personally, me, I kind of feel like it's going to be launched a little closer to, or at least teased closer to the holiday time, just because that is going to be their biggest draw. Though if they do release it around that time, then games like Legends Z Alpha, which are going to be huge holiday draws, because, you know, Scarlet and Violet launched in what, I think it was the end of November, early December of 2022. Massive holiday sales for the company. So really, honestly, Nintendo would be smarter to do a Q1, Q2 drop of their new product in 2025, and then have Legends Z Alpha be one of the premier products pushing their sales going into that whole holiday season in 2025. I think that makes the most sense. Now, There has been industry reporters that have said that Nintendo Switch 2 won't launch until after April of 2025. However, Nintendo itself has confirmed that specifically a successor to the Nintendo Switch. That is a very important distinction there. A successor to the Nintendo Switch, not a new Nintendo console. Literally, they're saying a Switch 2 is coming and will be announced within this fiscal year. Now, I honestly don't know when the fiscal year ends for Nintendo, but expect that soon. Some people even expect it this month. I personally don't think they would announce it this month. I think they'll announce it. Personally, I think they're going to wait until the holiday rush is well into its whole thing, because they want those Switch sales coming up here shortly. So when we talk about this, what kind of things are we really considering? I mean, what is actually happening here? And the honest answer is, well, supply chain issues are over. That's no longer a factor. And the PS5 and the new Xbox consoles honestly have been a bit of a fizzle. Let's be fair. There's a handful of good titles on each one, but because it was so hard to get your hands on these items, a lot of people have felt pretty disillusioned. Like, there's really just like, you know, you can count on one, maybe two hands, the number of top-notch titles on either one of the consoles. And when it comes to the Xbox, most of those titles wind up going to PC anyway. It seems like Microsoft is doing a big push to kind of cross-platform between their device and the PC. And it kind of makes sense, because game consoles aren't just game consoles anyway. Most game consoles now are your multimedia device. But with the way smart TVs work, there's almost not a need for that. Like, somebody would be buying an Xbox not to be an Xbox. Most people buy it as an Xbox, but also they're going to use it as, you know, a media device, or some kind of place to watch Netflix, watch Disney Plus, all that kind of stuff. Think about how often you use your console as something that's not a console. I know for me, prior to getting a smart TV, it was everything. Like, our PS4 was used 24 hours a day almost, it felt. So when it comes to all of that, I think, honestly, we're at a time where the Switch 2 makes a ton of sense. A lot of people are disillusioned with the new consoles, and a fresh Nintendo product is something the market can finally bear. Now, a lot of people have talked about, you know, the physical size of it. We'll have an 8-inch screen. I think the honest answer is, sure, it'll have a larger screen. Obviously, it'll be an OLED screen. It'll still have Joy-Cons. Hopefully, they're a little better built, although, if I'm honest, I do love the Nintendo's warranty on those things. But hardware-wise, we're looking for something that is most likely comparable to a current generation Android or iPhone. We're really looking at like a current gen Snapdragon or some kind of ARM architecture in that realm. So for those people that aren't super tech savvy, basically we're talking about a very, very, very modern tablet, more or less. So you're going to be, and I know that sounds kind of, you know, people are looking for ray tracing and all this stuff. You don't need that in this console. This console that's not what a Nintendo product, a modern Nintendo product, is going to do. You're not looking at something that is going to be a major powerhouse and compete with PlayStation, compete with Xbox. You're looking for something that is going to be just a fun device that is hardy, that is trustworthy, that the last few years, like most Switches did, unless you dropped it, we'll probably still have really hardy screens. They probably have even better protectors now for those screens, because I know it's one of the biggest things that I saw going into the Switch marketplace were just damaged Switches galore. But nevertheless, I think it's the perfect time. And I'm going to say by the end of this year, we will have a lot of official word, very public official word from Nintendo regarding the Switch 2. And I think Z Alpha will probably be a August, September release next year. I don't see this being any earlier than that, because they need to get that new console out there. Now, will this be on the original Switch? I hope not. And let me explain why I say that. For those of you that remember the whole debacle with CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk and all that stuff, when that dropped, that is a game that was an insanely hardware-intensive game. Now, I'm really talking like 4 years ago at this point. And For those of you that remember that launch, you remember how abysmal the immediate reactions were to that. And a lot of that simply is because they were not realistic about what their product required. They were trying to push it out on older platforms. They were trying to push it out to basically potatoes. And really, this should have been more like a crisis level event. If you don't know what I mean by that, essentially, this should have been the thing that was basically billed as, this is going to test your PC. This is going to test your rig. This probably won't even run right on new generation consoles, but will release on new generation consoles. The thought that they could release this on a PlayStation 4 was laughable at best. But I get it. Once we found out no one was getting PS5s, once we found out supply chain issues were going to be a thing, 30 series graphic cards were nigh impossible to get your hands on and things like that, they really had to go back to the drawing board and say, how are we going to sell millions and millions of copies? And the result was an abysmal adaptation to the marketplace. People had unrealistic expectations of what this hardware was going to, or of what the software was going to do on their 10-year-old hardware. That's what PlayStation 4 was at the time. People just expected the newest, greatest thing on something that simply wasn't going to support that. So if Legends Z Alpha comes to the original Switch, I really feel like it is going to be the worst thing for Pokemon, because our hardware couldn't handle what Scarlet and Violet brought to the table. The next generation of Pokemon, and I think this honestly will still be considered a Gen 9 game. I don't think we're going to get a Gen 10 game until we get a mainline series. But I think the second Legends adventure, especially being that this is now going to be in a city instead of like this, the world we saw behind us, this is actually going to be in a busy cityscape. We really need better hardware for this. Nintendo has been teasing it, and I think we'll get word really soon about what is actually to be on there, and hopefully we get specs and all that. But will Legends Z Alpha be on the original Nintendo Switch? I don't think so. That said, a lot of current consoles have touted backwards compatibility, and I think that is a fantastic thing. So I do expect the Nintendo Switch 2, or whatever it's going to be marketed as, will still have a slot. It will probably still have the exact same slot interface, just better hardware, or maybe like an added slot in the card or something like that. But kind of like DS to the 3DS, it should be backwards compatible, and it should be able to play those games pretty regularly. So yes, you will probably be able to replace your Nintendo Switch with this Switch 2 device. So that said, Switch 2, I'm expecting an official release late spring, early summer next year. This, I'm expecting late summer, early fall next year. And I'd be shocked if they do anything aside from that. I think it's too soon for the market to bear at this point, though. If they do try to push it out by the end of the year, possible. But I really don't think, we haven't had enough grumblings in the marketplace really to kind of justify that. And nobody's really kind of come out and said, oh, we have a dev kit for it yet, which a couple of people did say about their Pro, as they called it. So dev kits, I'm sure, are out there now, but a lot of people signed NDAs, and Nintendo will prosecute those NDAs. So don't expect anything until Nintendo official has announced it. We'll probably start seeing Brave leakers with their dev kits probably early part of next year, and then, like I said, by the end of spring, early summer, everything will just snowball, and it'll be fantastic. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like, comment, and share. This is just my predictions. I'd like to hear yours, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.